queue. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this special Tuesday night's meeting of the General Forum. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Staff will take a roll call of the members.
Mr. Balachandran. Here. Mr. Marlowe.
Here.
Ms. Baring. Ms. Engman. Ms. Kristen Cootie. Mr. Lipscomb. Mr. Marshall.
Here.
Mr. Bernier.
Here.
Mr. Best.
Here.
Mr. Fragola.
Here.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Ms. Trainer's unable to join us. Mr. Gracie Griffin. Mr. Heller. Ms. Stevens.
Here.
Ms. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Beck. Ms. Hartle.
Here.
Ms. Hoover. Mr. Piper. Mr. Cervello.
Here.
Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. Hammeister. Mr. Hardin.
Here.
Mr. Lord.
Here.
Mr. Wilson. Mr. Abrams.
Here.
Mr. Magruder.
Here.
Ms. Robb.
Here.
Mr. Trevino. And Ms. Whitman. It's like Ms. Hoover's on her way in.
Okay, according to Scott, we have a quorum this evening, so we can approve items. First, a call for possible new agenda items.
Public comment?
How about public comment?
Sorry, public comment. Yeah, I'm skipping ahead once again. I'm so overeager. Any public comments? Hearing or seeing none, we move on to new agenda items. Anyone with a new agenda item? I will be proposing one when we consider the solar power purchase agreement because we have additional legal fees of, Pam has told me is $4,176 that we need to consider. That number was not known at the time of the executive committee, and that was part of the reason it did not appear on this agenda. Next item.
Would you like to make a motion to that?
I shall make a motion that we put it on the agenda. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Okay, motion passes. It will be on the agenda after we discuss the presentation on the solar power purchase agreement and item 6. Okay, this time there is only one consent item, and it is a very simple one, the approval of the minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now, the next item is Proclamation 2023-3, recognizing October as Community Planning Month, and will be presented by Mr. May.
Thank you. Let's get this full screen here. Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim May. I'm the director of the Center Regional Planning Agency, and I wanted to do a brief presentation this evening regarding National Community Planning Month. You have the proclamation in your agenda, but I thought it would be nice to summarize 60 years of regional and local planning in the Center Region in about 10 minutes. So I appreciate your time. There's a lot of things that have happened, but I think there's some things that we take for granted in this community, but over a long period of time, through lots of volunteer hours, through lots of leadership at this level and in your communities, we've built a community that is a great place to live and a great example for other regional planning agencies and COGs throughout the nation. I wanted to point out that the CRPA, our planning agency, does precede the formation of the COG by 9 years. We were first established in 1960, and the first meeting was in 1962. Over that time, we've also been responsible for transportation planning, and most recently, the two areas that we've expanded have been sustainability, and the refuse and recycling program moved over from COG administration in 2019 as well. In terms of growth, there's been just tremendous growth here in the region from 1960 to 1920, to 2020, I'm sorry. A huge amount of growth has happened in the region. If you just look at over here from 1960, Half Moon was just a little bit larger than the USC marching band. They've grown quite a bit since then. Obviously, the borough has been the big municipality on the block. As a total percentage over the years, though, they've declined from about 64% of the population in 1960 to about 43% today. So a lot of the growth has not only happened in the borough, but in the surrounding municipalities, and that's why regional planning has been so important for our growth. As I mentioned, our first meeting was held in 1960, actually. Since that time, we've prepared 5 comprehensive plans that direct growth in the region, and our next comprehensive plan is on schedule to be started probably next year sometime. And I did want to point out a couple of things about our planning process. This is a land use planning map, future land use map showing the 2000 comprehensive plan. You know, here's Half Moon Township over here, almost all undeveloped. There's Stormstown there, Patton Township, Borough of State College. And this little line, you see these dots around here, is what's called the primary growth area. That was really the origin of our growth boundary and sewer service area. It really showed up in 2000, but in the previous planning documents, that concept was always thought about, like how can we manage to contain growth where there's infrastructure and development, preserve farmland, preserve things out in other communities that are important to people in the region. So that first showed up on a map in 2000, and here's our 2013 comprehensive plan. Again, shows the growth boundary source service area and how much urban growth has been contained in that area. In 2000, that was a policy, and then in 2006, we adopted the regional growth boundary source service area implementation agreement, which really put an ordinance behind that so that each municipality had a vested interest in knowing and understanding what other municipalities are doing, where we're growing, and where we want to grow in the future. And that's been a very consistent model throughout the years in terms of how we've developed as a region. I also wanted to point out the importance of the local planning relationship with regional planning. In Pennsylvania, at the regional level, we're establishing policy, but it's really implemented at the local level through your regulatory process. And going back to 1970s and earlier, most of the municipalities had a zoning ordinance at that time, but we were also thinking about how we could do a model ordinance for that. We've done other model ordinances through the year. I also want to point out that all the municipalities were involved in the local planning program at one time. State College Borough, Ferguson Township, and College Township have withdrawn, and Patton has an intent to withdraw from the local planning program in 2025. And that, I think, is kind of a natural process as the municipalities get larger, they get more resources, they get more complex problems, and it's more effective for them to do local planning at the municipal level. So that is something that's definitely transitioned over the years, but we want to be aware that we need to continue to make sure that we have a good relationship with the municipalities and we're delivering the services that you want at the local level. I want to give you a couple of examples of how that has worked in terms of coordinating local and regional planning. So here's a diagram, an aerial photograph. Ferguson Township, a little bit of college and State College Borough, State High here. We're kind of over in this area here, and here's Whitehall Road. And this is the regional growth boundary source service area, and you can see the extent of development in 1971, and then in 2014, and how that growth boundary source service area has really served as a boundary to where we don't want growth to go. You know, down here is the heart of Tarmas well fields, lots of agricultural land, things people cherish in the community. So another example, up here in College Township, fabulous Nittany Mall just starting out there, and obviously Mount Nittany over here. getting better all the time, right, Adam? And, but this is also a good example of how local regulations have been used to contain where growth is happening in the community, and we preserve the features that we want. One more, I wouldn't want to leave our friends in Harris Township out, and here's 1971, where State College Bypass, also known as SR 322, is just starting to come under construction here, and that's really what prompted a lot of the regional planning early when we started doing this, was that corridor coming through. And then this is what it looked like about 10 years ago. So a lot of areas have been preserved, and we're very proud of our relationship with the municipalities and being able to do that, and the leadership that you've shown in your communities. A couple areas I think that are important to highlight that we do in the planning office are transportation planning. Dating back to the 70s, we had what was called the Center Region Area Transportation Study. This is what helped do the first steps in regional planning. It was basically the area around State College Borough. In 1982, we were big enough to have to form an MPO, which is a requirement of the federal government for urbanized areas over 50,000 people, so that we can take federal funding that goes to PennDOT, that goes to the local level. That was first formed in the center region municipalities only. It remained that way until 2004, when we went to a county-wide MPO. And that was a big step for all of us here. And it really helped us solidify our relationship with Center County and also provide great transportation outside the center region as well. A couple areas a couple projects I want to highlight are the I-99, I-80 interchange. These projects take a long time to design and get developed and funded. So this was a big deal when this happened, and these kind of projects are really transformational for us and something that the MPO is very good at. So it was announced in 2018, and this is the Jacksonville Road interchange here. The rest of the actual interstate to interstate interchange will be built over the next 6 to 8 years. That whole thing is going to stay open, but we'll be left with a transportation facility that could really impact this county in many positive ways in the future. So that was a really big project for us. On the local side, we do other smaller projects in the MPO as well. This is Warner Boulevard in 2014 and today. And at this time, PennDOT had announced they were going to do a resurfacing project on Warner Boulevard. But they had a program called PennDOT Connects, which gets with the local municipalities to help align what the municipality wants with what PennDOT is doing. And we said, well, we don't want to just repave this road. We would like a narrower cross-section to improve it, to make better pedestrian improvements along the corridor that can connect to Oak Hall Regional Park and to Mount Nittany Middle School. So through that process, we invested a lot of time with PennDOT, and we actually ended up with a really great improvement there that not only helps with the traffic, but it helps the community as well in lots of different ways. We also work very closely with CATA in transit planning. Greg Kausch in our office is our transit planner. He spends a lot of time integrating some of the planning things we would do with CATA. He reviews all our land development plans to make sure they're getting bus service. And he also works with them on some of their strategic planning efforts. Ann Mester also works on our bike planning, and we've just undertaken an active transportation plan that's countywide. We received a grant for that for $180,000 from PennDOT with a $20,000 local match, so really good leverage of our local resources to get a plan that we need. We also, Pam Adams is leading our sustainability initiative, and this is probably one of the most popular programs I've seen since I've been here that's been rolled out. It's very well supported in the community. There was actually a lot of integration with the things that we're doing in the planning world. Pam's done a really great job getting this off the ground and getting lots of solar and other renewable energy improvements, and has a great network through Penn State and other people Commonwealth-wide to make that happen. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, is how do we get rid of all our refuse and recycling. Shelley Motto is heading up this program. This moved over from the COG administration office in 2019. We're coming up on a new contract for that program. That's probably going to change a lot of the ways that you see how trash is picked up and improvements in our recycling program as well. The last thing I want to mention here is very important for us to be out in the community, listening to what people have to say, the kind of services they want to deliver, and the kind of community they want to live in. This was a little bit diminished during COVID, but we're hoping as things improve that we'll be back out there. We also do planning with the local planning commissions. We bring them in occasionally so we can all kind of get on the same page in terms of learning what's new in the planning world. Again, Pam went through this with her sustainability forum through Penn State a few years ago, very successful forum. But we're always learning how to push out information through our social media, through newsletters, talking to people, so we're trying to elevate the program. The last slide I have, I'd like you to just take a minute and read this. This was a quote from John Viro from the first Center Regional Planning Commission annual report in 1962. I think it's as applicable today as it was when he said that. And I want to thank all of you that are in this room this evening and the people that have come before you for the support for the planning program through the years. I think it's resulted in a great community. Very proud of what we've been able to accomplish and the staff that we've had. It couldn't have been done without thousands and thousands of volunteers on your planning commissions through the years and the time that you invest in the community. So thank you, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. May? Mr. Lord?
Yes, Jim, as we've had 3 municipalities pull out of the planning part of, we got another one that's on the table moving that direction. Harrison Township has some planning expertise now in-house. How do you see the planning agency evolving with this trend?
I think we need to come up, for the municipalities that can't afford a full-time planner or don't need a full-time service, we have to come up, I think, with a little bit different way of funding that and delivering that service. I'm not exactly sure how that looks, Bruce. What's happening is the local planning costs are not only the planner that comes to your community, but operational costs, other staff that's supporting that planning position. So if we go to 2 municipalities that we're providing that service for, I think the burden will be pretty heavy on them in that program. So we're thinking about how to do that. We haven't come up with we're going through the budget process, but I think we're definitely going to become a larger regional planning organization. The way that we'll provide service to the municipalities that have their own planning staff are by coming to you more frequently to make sure what we're doing at the regional level is being implemented locally. When we've had planners in all the municipalities, it was great because they had a regional perspective and they could come back to the municipality and communicate to you what we were trying to accomplish. So we're going to have to work through that through this budget cycle. So I have a few thoughts, but I'm not quite ready to get them out in public yet. So,
Okay, thank you.
That was a good question.
Mr. Belishadra?
Thanks a lot for that presentation. Really interesting. I'm wondering if there are plans in place in terms of like a regional bike infrastructure with shared use paths that would connect municipalities so that we can better connect the region through bike infrastructure rather than just some of the road infrastructure that we've seen.
Yes, we currently have a center region bike plan that we work with on the municipalities. And basically what we try to do with that is at the regional level, figure out where the gaps are and then work with the municipalities in terms of what their plans are for the local bike system. We're also just launched a county-wide active transportation plan that includes a bicycle system county-wide. That'll be going through the process all of next year. So that is in place, and we work directly with the municipalities and other partners to make sure that we are connecting parks to open spaces to schools to neighborhoods and those kind of things. So yeah, we have that plan.
Any other questions about Mr. May's presentation? There's a motion there. Would anyone wish to make it? So moved. We have motion? Do a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? All in, I guess we can vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. May. And next, we have a presentation on the solar power purchase agreement, a project update from the COG SPPA representative, Ms. Del Corso, and the COG sustainability planner, Ms. Adams.
I got it. Yep, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and happy fall. Hopefully the weather doesn't negate the beautiful fall foliage that we expect to receive soon. Tonight's purpose is to present an update on the solar power purchase agreement project. The agenda for this evening is to give an overview. If you all recall, it has been a while since we've been here. I believe February was the last time you received an update. So we want to reiterate what the purpose of this project is. So I will go over that briefly again to reiterate that. The current status of where we are in the process. I'll turn it over to Pam to talk about the energy markets, to give a little bit of information on what's been happening and some historical numbers. Then we will talk about the project costs and the next steps. Oop. So many of you have probably seen this before. Anytime there's a multi-year project, it is beneficial to repeat over and over again the information of the why. What is this project? Who's involved? Because you only receive updates every so often. So the purpose of this is to go through these again. This is a repetition. You have probably seen this before, but it's just to make sure we're all on the same page with the purpose of the effort. So the why includes the guiding principles. These principles were established by the Solar Power Purchase Agreement Working Group when it was established a few years ago. I want to highlight B and C. You can read all of these, they haven't changed, but B is to primarily help mitigate exposure to budget volatility. So this is budget time, and one of the big reasons for this effort is to reduce the spikes, the highs and lows of any volatility in the budgeting process, to smooth out those bumps so that you have better forecasting year to year. And then also, with the sustainability efforts that were mentioned that Pam's been involved in, many of the municipalities have goals for sustainability, and so this is a direct impact on helping achieve and hit those targets in those goals. The who that's involved in this project are the municipalities and the entities that you see over on the left-hand side there. You will notice there are 2 strike-throughs. Through this year, the 2 entities there, Center Area Transportation Authority, CATA, and Half Moon Township, have decided not to participate further in the effort. So there are 13 remaining entities who are included in this contract and review process. Also, heavily involved in this effort on a weekly basis is the project management team that you see on the right-hand side there. They're the ones that really get their hands dirty and boots on the ground doing much of the work. The what of this project. So this is kind of like a timeline, and it's also major milestones in this process. So if you look back there, in the fall of 2018 is when discussions started for this effort. The first SPPA working group meeting happened in 2019. Then it was determined how we were going to share the costs for this entire effort in July of 2020. Energy service consultant was hired called Green Sky in October of 21. They helped develop an RFP, and that went out for proposal, and bids came back in October 22. And since that time of last fall to this spring, I think many of you, I think we gave a presentation about this, but the proposals were reviewed based on the RFP criteria, and a solar developer and a retail provider was chosen. Since that time, in April-ish, all of the entities involved provided some commitment numbers to help inform the contract process and this legal review. So since the spring, up until this point, we'll go into this a little bit more, the current status has been legal review. So we'll go into that detail a little bit later. So that's where we are today. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the contract signing anticipation was in the summer. Was that June? Does anybody recall? I think it was anticipated for this summer, but the legal review is extended a bit, so signing contracts is anticipated by the end of the year. I will take a pause there. Does anybody have any questions so far about that? Okay, I believe I have one more here. And how? How are we doing this? So through that RFP proposal process, 2 different entities were chosen. There's a solar developer portion. The company is called Prospect 14, and then a retail provider portion. So one generates the solar power, the other distributes. So those are the 2 entities or groups that we're working with right now for that legal review process. And now I will pass it to Pam for some energy or market history.
Yes, so my name is Pam Adams, Sustainability Planner, for those watching on TV. I am not a market expert, and tomorrow we will have our Solar Power Working Group meeting, but it made sense to have this meeting tonight. So I prefer when the consultant does this discussion, but I'm going to do my best to answer it. And one way is we can look backwards, and what I have up here are electricity rates that I know existed at these different points in time. Some are through a COG contract that we had for 3 years. We've been having contracts since 2015, between 6 months to 3 years, depending on the situation. Some of the points in time are from College Township or Patton Township's contract, particularly those in 2022. So those were the rates that we were paying. And so if I look back over these points in time, the average electricity rate, which includes all of the adders, the costs that we're paying, the average is $67.44 per megawatt hour. So that's the average over that time. Our current SPPA market model that we've been given from the consultant says that the rates that we would pay today would be $67.53. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that there is that intent to be around the market number or lower, right? That was one of the things that we've talked about, trying to be, if we can get solar, renewable energy for that average market price or below, we'll be happy. Now, trying to predict the future, this is where the consultant comes in and provides us with information. So I have 2 graphs here because we presented information in January, and at that time the market, the price, if you remember, if you look back here, earlier in 2023, the rates were higher and they've gone down. So they've been dropping. Oops, wrong way. But in January, the electricity market costs were higher, closer to that 60 cents. And his numbers include just the electricity, not the little grid adders that are included in our bills for distribution. And so the blue line on both of them are what the market electricity rates are. The dotted blue line is what the PPA rate is. And in January, we were providing information at like $50 per megawatt hour because we didn't have the final price from the solar developer, whereas now in September we do have it. It's $45.9 per megawatt hour. So that dotted PPA blue line demonstrates what the PPA price is. And then the average bill rate is what we'd pay, because if you recall, there's the PPA rate, but we are also having the settlement cost that always provides a little bit of variation of plus or minus 5%. So basically what it's trying to show, it's move up and down, and they're going to continue to do that, as you saw in the previous graph. Every month, every year, they do go up and down consistently if you recall from a previous presentation, they have always generally increased over that time period. So from year to year, there's variation with a continuing increase, which is what this is showing. So as the markets go up, we have more potential for savings, if you want to say, whereas if they're at a lower point, we have less opportunity for savings. But we're in line with market. So this graph is just to explain that with electricity, it's really determined, influenced by the natural gas market. So again, looking backwards, that previous slide was looking forward, but if we want to look at the past year, which is the top one, the natural gas market was up very high, and that again, some of the municipalities got locked in at a higher rate last year and after COVID, but it's now come down and has been relatively flat for the last eight months. It could indicate that it's at the bottom of where the pricing is going to go down low. Now, the graph on the bottom one is the past 10 years. So again, I looked at the COG rates over the past 8 years. This is the natural gas market over the last 10 years. And you could see in 2020, it was at the lowest. Hopefully you can see that. I'll share these with Scott so you can zoom in if you need to, but it's close to where that arrow is pointing. That was when rates were definitely at their lowest. And now we're closer, like you can see at the 2023, they've gone back up a little bit. But over those last 10 years, there are more ups, that potential when all those rates go above basically that black line is opportunity where the PPA, our rate, will be beneficial and offer more savings from the cost models. So those are my 3 slides to try to explain the energy markets the best I can. I'm happy to answer any questions now, or if you want to sit on it, we can wait as it now proceeds.
Any questions for the data? Okay, Mr. Balachandran.
Thanks a lot for that. I just had a clarifying question, which is that just at a 30,000 foot level, the solar power purchase agreement is meant to, if I understand it, if consumers have a right to choose what their power is going to be in Pennsylvania, the power of the SPPA is not only to have all the COG municipalities purchasing solar power, but it's also to try and ease some of the market issues with solar power. Am I understanding that correctly? Is that like one of the big drivers for this?
So the solar power purchase agreement that we're working on will just cover the municipal and the working group members' electricity to the amount that they want. It will put on the grid, the electric grid, about 23 megawatts of solar. So it helps the electric grid in Pennsylvania have more solar, but that solar is, ours, if you want to say, the municipal operations.
Okay, so in fact, it's not only for cost savings, but it's also to sort of have greater solar power generating capacity in the grid itself. Those are like the 30,000 foot like real benefits to the region and to the municipalities. It's not only sort of locking in a price, but it's also to be able to get that's more effective than say if you call up the power company. Like for me, if I'm imagining my home as a municipality, it's more powerful than me calling up as an individual municipality or an individual kind of resident and asking them to switch my power to solar or renewable sources. Is that right?
That is correct. So currently COG and some of the municipalities buy RECs. So we are purchasing green energy from somewhere, and those markets can be a little vague, and this will be, we have solar installed in Center County that is, again, I'm going to put it in quotes ours because it goes through the grid, and the electricity market, there's the electricity that you receive and there's the solar renewable energy credits, and I'm not going to get into that a whole lot, but they're the 2 different markets. But we are helping to put solar on the electric grid for Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernier?
Hey, thank you. Going back to Danelle's presentation, did you get a reason from CAF for pulling out?
The main reason I would say is because they were not convinced. They were currently in a CoStarz contract that was a very low rate because they locked it in close to the COVID time period, and they were unsure that they were comfortable with the numbers, so they chose not to, and they thought that they might be doing their part by being a public transit authority.
So the CoStar's contract rate was for solar generated?
No. It was just that they were buying it, their CoStarz program, their electricity rate was like at 4 or 5 cents, so they weren't convinced. They're convinced that they'll still be able to get cheaper price through CoStarz.
Okay, thanks.
Other
right.
questions? Okay.
Now we're gonna go back to Danelle, so we're not finished.
Okay, back to Danelle. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So part of the final slides here are around the current status of legal review and where we are, and then we'll talk about the project costs. Wanted to give just a highlight. I believe we might have presented this before, but to discuss the scope and complexity. That's really the purpose of this. With each of the contracts that entities will need to be signing or involved in, there are 5 contracts for each entity to be reviewing and signing. And those deal with the direct energy retailer and Prospect 14, the solar provider. So just wanted to give the scope of the legal review and how many pieces are involved in this process. So that's foundation for the next few slides. Currently, there have been a number of issues resolved through the legal review, and I believe, 1 and 2, we've been through 2 different legal reviews, and there are still, I believe, 2 more to go. But these are the issues that have been resolved. I, nor Pam, nor Peter, or Randy over there are legal experts. So if you have questions about these specific statements, we may have to defer. I do have statements that were provided to describe each of these things, but what I can tell you is that Green Sky and through this legal review, the issues that are being discussed and resolved are all around reducing as much risk as possible for the working group and all of the entities involved. So the language associated with all of these contracts, 5 different contracts, need to be applied to the working group and all of the individual entities. So there's a lot of being very comprehensive in what the language is saying to make sure that nothing is negated from one contract to another, and if an individual entity decision is made, how it may impact the working group and vice versa. So if you have specific questions about any of those bullet items, like I said, I do have statements that describe them, but they are very legalese. Do you want me to read the statements?
Does anybody want to hear the legalese? Can you supply that to us without reading this?
Can I what?
Make copies of it and give it to us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just,
Yeah, okay. The issues that are still open for resolution, these bullet items are a little bit easier to understand, and I again also have statements pertaining to the specifics of these. I don't think that any of us might be able to answer any technical questions about them very well, but we can definitely take any questions out and bring back answers to them. What I can say, the location of the solar development project, for example, has language around the location has been difficult, as neither of the 2 projects which Prospect 14 has identified for our solar power are through all of the necessary permitting processes. So that's just an example of some of the legal review is not able to be defined yet because some of these processes are still outstanding. Prospect 14 is going to be developing the solar project, but it is not completed yet. So that's just an example there. Does anyone want me to read any other statements about these other bullet items right now?
Send it to us.
We'll send them. Yep, absolutely.
that's better, probably.
Okay. So that's a overview status of the legal review. Associated costs with the legal reviews and the entire project in general. So this is giving you the overview of the total project cost is about $235,000. And this is the breakdown, the consultant fees, and then each of the legal review rounds. Over on the right-hand side, before I get into the legal rounds, the P14 stands for the Prospect 14. That's the solar developer. They have offered $50,000 to help continue this process to completion. There are two payments of $25,000 once two various milestones are hit, and then they will provide that money. So that is still in the works, is getting the details about that. That is going to be pertinent because, as the chair said earlier, one of the asks is going to be for about $4,200 from COG. There are monies that are needed up front to keep this process going. As those couple milestones are hit, Prospect 14 will provide back $50,000 to the working group, which would then get distributed back to the entities. So that would mean that the total overall project cost is approximately $184,725. So again, we are through round 1 and 2 of the legal review. Recently, the State College Area School District has committed $30,000 legal round 3. So that is the push to continue this effort. The commitment being asked by all of the entities is to also participate in these final legal round fees in order to get this project to completion. We are down the home stretch. So the commitment, the scope, the complexity, this is a project that is sort of blazing a trail, and there's not really any model out there to emulate. So I believe through this project, the working group, the project team members can probably attest to this, is this will be a model to emulate for others. So it's a very important project to see through to completion that has been going on since 2019. So let me go to the very specific ask for the COG. So COG has already committed to $7,340. The legal review, that's a hashed golden bar up there, is being covered by the State College Area School District. And so what is remaining is that gold bar over there, the $11,005, would be the total COG commitment. So an additional $4,200.
Exact figure I was given was $4,176.
And I believe that's going to get confirmed tomorrow at the working group, or do we know that for sure? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just say that hash, that 8906, 8,906 is what COG should pay because the school district has made the commitment to continue to move forward mid-September. So that round 3 has been committed. And then the round 4, the school district voted today to not exceed $50,000 total in round 4 of legal. So that is where that total amount comes into that $4,176. The additional amount that COG should put forward to not exceed to spend on the SPPA project.
Yes.
Before this one?
Backspace. Yes.
First bar there, the first grouping, was that the original projected plan?
The 85,000, is that the one
No,
you're asking?
You have consultant fee, legal round 1 and 2, 3, 4, and total. Was that what was originally planned or estimated?
No. When we originally did this and set up the cost-sharing agreement, we thought that we would need a consultant, and we estimated $75,000, and we
Okay.
thought we'd be able to use our legal services from our own entities to help with the legal side of it. And so we incorrectly understood the legal portion of this, and so the working group talked about the 85,000, that was approved and discussed, that we did need to have that.
That was an additional.
That was additional cost that was presented back in October and then January, like, I don't have those dates exactly. And so we did choose the expert solicitor, and he comes at a hefty price, his company. So we are getting quality work, but it's an expensive process.
So then the additional legal rounds, as they're called, what establishes the need for another round, a legal round? Is that a review?
Yep, so basically the first round checks everything out, then it goes back to the Prospect 14, and then they give comments back, and then it goes sort of back and forth. And the consultant is doing a lot of that intermediary stuff, but then the solicitor, they do red lines, they work through it, and it's been going back and forth to resolve some of those issues.
Prospect 14 is the consultant?
Yes, Prospect 14, sorry, is the solar developer.
Solar developer.
Yeah, so
And
they
that
have their legal team review it so that they feel like they're safe with their contract, and then it comes back to us, and so there's conversations back and forth to get
Okay,
the
so
contracts.
solar consultant and developer.
Green
are
Sky is the consultant.
Green Sky is the consultant. Okay. And then so that's a projected total based on what you now know.
The consultant has given that as a cap. He's worked beyond that, I'm
That's the
pretty sure.
235.
The cap on the is only on the consultant. We're trying to get a not to exceed from solicitor, but we haven't gotten one.
Okay. And so current total would be 184,725, right?
Assuming that Prospect 14 has said they'll do the 50,000, but today the cost is 234,725 because we won't get that. But yes,
And so the 50,000 is the difference, is the amount that
the new legal cost is, yes. So
that's a
basically,
credit. Somebody's going to give you that money
right.
back. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Mr. Graham?
Just a couple comments. When this contract is signed in December, you hope December, will they have a site picked by that time? Or will that contract give us a site?
So there's 2 sites that they're working at, and it looks like, I don't know the exact answer to that. By December, they might have one. It's going to depend on some of the processes that they're working through. It will definitely have the capacity identified that they will provide this capacity, and it'll probably narrow it down to a particular township or a particular county, but I don't have that language yet. That's to be determined.
But you're asking to pay these additional legal fees now, but we don't know if they're going to have a site in December when it comes down to the contract.
Yep, I'm going to have Randy Brown come up from the
Oh,
school
yeah,
district to
okay,
help
good.
answer that question, because he's had some
And the other
conversations.
question is, CATA, I don't know if that's quite all the factors they pulled out, but co-stars, did we look at co-stars?
Have
If
we
we're
looked
saving,
at-
well, save my electricity, if they feel they're saving more electricity with co-stars, did we look at co-stars?
We have not looked at co-stars recently. Well, actually, Joe Vigelin would know the answer to that if he's looked at co-stars during the we work with Premier Power and we do different contracts. I know the Recycling Authority, there's definitely things to look at with co-stars, but they do it at certain time periods, so it's not currently open to join co-stars on that, but maybe the next round.
Okay, well, okay. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, okay. I'll let Randy answer your
Okay.
first question, and
Yes.
I'll think if I can clarify that a little bit more.
Well, I guess, I just came to my mind, if they do, why don't we, but maybe we don't want to bother with that, I don't know.
Good evening, Randy Brown, Finance Officer for the State College School District. To answer your question about location being defined and specified in the contract, the legal team has recommended, because of the desire to get the contract moving forward, even if it does take another month or 2 or potentially 3, and the facts of the locations not being through the necessary permitting process, that the language has been changed to not identify a specific location, but it would require Green Sky to identify and commit to providing capacity to provide all of our electric needs. Prospect 14, excuse me, wrong firm. Thank you.
But, if they don't have it in December, a location, they're gonna have it for another year. And then what is gonna happen, we're gonna come back and say, well, geez, look like we need another $100,000 to do this. That's my concern. Is this a last money we would have to pay? What we're talking about right now? Legal fees?
The estimate, what I'm pushing for with the attorney is to get a not to exceed amount of an additional $50,000 to get the contracts completed with both Prospect 14 and Direct Energy, such that all 13 now participating organizations will have a document to review for agreement and consider participation in this project. So that is my goal. I have not gotten that confirmed as of yet. If Prospect 14 would back out, would default, would not be able to come through, there could be additional costs if all organizations or multiple organizations wanted to go through this process again. That is a very known fact, and for any of you that know me, I'm a very black and white person. That is a very true statement. I'm not going to stand here and say that it's not, but we are working towards a goal of getting agreements into your hands so that you can vote to participate or not.
I think we're committed to this, but my concern is it's becoming a little murky about when this will happen and when it won't happen. And we keep asking for round 3, 4, up to round 4. And I don't know if that's, I don't know the legal reasons for this, but it seems awful murky. What you're asking us now, we don't know when it's even going to happen.
Correct.
The sites you're looking at may not be available at all.
That is again a very true statement.
So, and what happens if we spend this money and
that's why we're removing the specific language of locations, so that Prospect then has to provide the power, even if it's not any of those 2 sites. But because they're not ready now, we're not looking for a implementation or product being available until 25 or 26.
And well, I'm a little concerned about that. It's murky to me. I'm not really a contract person or that type of thing, but it seems to me we're entering into a contract. We don't know when the result is going to be or how much it's going to be. I don't know if you would be able to sign this contract in December or not, but if you do,
can you
then we're legally bound to keep paying it.
Once you sign the contract, there will be no more legal fees. The only time
But we may not get a product.
If you don't get a product, there will be repercussions that Prospect has to pay us back or pay you all back.
Okay, that sounds a little better.
That's why I'm trying to understand your questions, and I'm asking for additional information.
That sounds a little better. Okay.
And you know, Mr. Graham's questions prodding about there might not be a project, there might not be a product. There will be, and if there weren't, there would be repercussions. There are projects, so you can go onto PJM, the grid operator now, and you can look at the queue now, and you can limit the search on the queue right now to look at solar projects by county and see the Prospect 14 projects in the queue where they are online today. You could go and do that. So they are viable, real projects. One of them is hung up because of an issue basically with the municipality and what it did in the queue for PJM, Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, the big grid operator, right? And so those review processes have introduced a wrinkle that's genuinely, from my perspective, I'm only speaking for myself, really annoying. But PJM has processes, and there was a delay not caused by the developer that has made some of that review just more difficult. There are 2 viable projects in the pipeline for the grid for us to access so that we get power. Those are the 2 that I understand to be on the table for us, but since they don't actually exist as built yet, and we don't know which one will be which, the language in the agreement, the power purchase agreement, has to say, they'll give us power, but we're not quite sure at this point exactly which one, but we have to do it. Does that make sense?
I think so. I don't
Okay.
know. I'm just asking these questions because it seems to me, murky to me, that we may be signing a contract that we don't know when they're gonna get the product, or that if we sign, they will have a place, when this contract is signed, will they be able to provide us with electricity within 2 months?
No, and
No.
that's not the way that that's not the way that this has ever been said to work. It will be the product from the solar provider. When it comes online, that is the start date of that particular contract, but it has to be managed by Direct Energy, who manages the power purchase agreement for us. So they will handle regular electricity and the solar product too. And so you won't even notice when the electricity mixture changes.
I don't know where my electricity comes from.
Mr. Abrams and then Mr. Cervello. Mr. Abrams?
I'd like to support this, but I'm very concerned, especially increasing costs and no increase in benefits so far, and we haven't even come to the end of this process. So this is very troubling to me.
That's a statement. Could somebody explain, I think that there was an explanation in that presentation of when this process will end. Could any of you clarify that?
I will do my best. At this point in time, we're at the, those final end pieces where it's most complicated and difficult. And we're trying to ensure with the legal review that when the contracts are signed, hopefully by the end of this year, and that means you'll have to have time to review it prior to the end of the year, that you will see that there is a way that when you sign the contract, if the developer doesn't perform, and we're not expecting him to be able to build the solar array until he has defined a time. So in the contract, it will have a deadline that he has to perform that solar installation. If he doesn't meet it, if the developer doesn't meet it, then they have to, pay us the injury that we're receiving, if you want to put it that way. Again, we've never done this. There aren't really models out there, so we don't know what the legal solicitor who is familiar with PPAs and who has been doing this, not for entities of 13 working group members, but his company is working to ensure that all 13 of us, and with the 5 contracts, that they're all integrated and put together. So it is a miscalculation, but we do believe that we're coming definitely to the end of the legal review process, but we don't, as Randy said, we haven't gotten a not to exceed number from them, so we don't know. We are working as hard as we can with our consultant to not have any additional legal costs and to hopefully keep it under that. But with Prospect 14 putting out that they have some skin in the game and are willing to help pay for that legal cost, it demonstrates some good faith, if you want to see it that way. And Randy has a comment.
Speaking of some good faith, the attorney is working right now at risk, going to continue to work on our contracts, and knowing full well that we need positive votes from 13 entities to agree to incur additional legal costs in order for them to get paid. And the school board today, just recently as this afternoon, approved going to incur a total of $50,000 in additional legal costs for, as a part of the group. But then I had to report to the attorney that needed to be a not to exceed amount. That the expectation was that that additional 50,000 in legal services would complete the agreements. They have not agreed to that yet. They've been working on a not to exceed amount for several days for me, probably almost a week. They did not give me an amount, so the school board told me to give them an amount, and to work that way in those negotiations. So I hope that that provides a little bit more background for you.
In the queue, Mr. Cervello, and then Mr. Magruder, and then Mr. Graham.
I just had a couple questions. The provider has to provide energy regardless. Does that mean that they have at their disposal power from the grid, whether it be solar or fossil or whatever you want to call it, traditional sources of energy? That's correct, right? So regardless of whether there's enough solar power or whatever, they're going to provide power.
Once we engage in the PPA,
Right.
and the solar energy begins. Prior to that, we can each individually contract with Direct Energy to get our power or continue to get power
Right, correct.
normally.
Yeah, the second question is, we were talking about those contracts, there was 5 contracts. Each member, each participant in this agreement has 5 contracts to sign, is that correct? I just wanted to clarify.
That is correct.
That's what I
Each
heard.
individual organization will need to approve
5 separate contracts.
5 separate contracts.
Thank you.
Mr. Magruder.
To my colleague's point, I just wanted to clarify, the incurring costs came specifically from the unanticipated legal fees. Given that early on, it seemed as though we thought we would be able to use our own internal counsel, but realized later on that we needed to use someone external. And so as far as the incurring costs without much in return, that really came from something that was unanticipated, correct?
That is correct. And then once we identified a legal team, we still didn't have a clear understanding of the amount of time and effort that it would take that team to develop the contracts for us. The Prospect 14 documents that were originally received were less than desirable by our legal team in order to protect all 13, or at the time, 15 original entities.
Thank you for that. And again, just to clarify, it seems like the legal counsel that we have obtained is pretty top-notch, high quality.
Yes, they were recommended by our consultant because of their vast experience and working knowledge in this area.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, the monies that we are putting toward this, should something, the rug be pulled from under us, something go awry, again, we'll be able to recoup, we'll have some type of recourse to recoup our monies.
Not the fees that we're paying now,
Outside,
no.
yeah, outside of the legal fees, yeah.
Once each organization engages in a contract, then there will be repercussions if the product and service is not delivered.
Okay.
And
Mr.
then
Graham.
to just the last point, general comment, again, this is, it's encouraging or refreshing to hear again that we are doing something that seemingly is unprecedented, doesn't really have a good framework for. And so I think with that, any sort of like trailblazers, there's going to be hiccups and things that seem ambiguous and unclear. However, I appreciate this presentation and keeping us kept abreast of what's happening so that it seems like we have some insight along the way. And again, I'm just in total awe of the work that's already been done with this. And I really trust that we're going to see this to the end. So thank you.
Okay, Mr. Graham, then Mr. Harden, and then Mr. Abrams again.
I do think we should move on to this. We do commit ourselves to this. But what does bother me is that if this doesn't fall, there will be repercussions. That means we take them to court. And how much is that going to cost? But that's another question altogether. Also, as I assume this is happening, do we have anybody reviewing these billings? I mean, they're billing us for this. Is anybody reviewing the billings, the invoices?
Yes, the school district and also.
I assume you would.
Mr. Grotini, who's the chair of the working group and has experience in the solar energy and industry.
Yeah, that can get very troublesome after a while, trying to review what their bills are, understanding what their bills are. So I assume that's happening. Okay.
Mr. Harden?
Yeah, just more of a comment on your timeline of December signing the contracts. It sounds like these contracts are harder than Chinese arithmetic, and so our solicitor is going to have time to go over them, and to get, depending on when you get them, we may not be in a position to sign them in December because, you know, our solicitor is going to have to make sure they are compatible with our township. So I'm not sure that December timeline is doable.
We were expecting them last week. We're hoping to get them in the next week or two.
Mr. Abrams?
I'm in support of this. It's just that these questions keep coming up, and I have another one now that if we're doing something unprecedented, how is it that the legal team is so experienced that they've done this for other people for a long time? Those two things don't really make any sense to me, but I trust that if they're that good, that they could do this, and so I'm not going to take away my support. I just have these questions.
I think I would best describe it as it's matching up the developer and this unprecedented group of municipal governments and authorities and that have never worked together. The attorney has done PPAs before. I can't speak to whether Prospect 14 has or not, but so that's why we have the experienced legal team, which is very costly and very salty. I appreciate that very much. But I have spent the most time with the attorney, and that's why I felt that it would be appropriate to come tonight to speak to you all and share that I have been very impressed with them, and they have. I believe that they are very much taking our best interest at heart and reducing our risk to the greatest amount possible.
Can I say something real quickly? I want to say that I think that it's really admirable and important, the questions that everyone is asking, and asking them in public, and making sure that we're holding each other accountable. Because in a process that is relatively unprecedented, you have to ask questions down to these levels of minutia so that taxpayers and voters know what it is that we're doing. And from experience on the project management team and in the working group, the kinds of questions that you're asking are the same questions that we're asking inside of the group and working to get answers for. And so I just want to express my appreciation to you all for asking the questions and making sure that we're having a full vetting of the project in public.
One of those minutia questions. I heard the other day that the State College Borough Water Authority was going to withdraw. Was that accurate? Anything?
I have no knowledge.
Okay. I didn't know if that were accurate or not.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion to pay the $4,176 fee.
So moved.
So moved in a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Are there any abstentions from this vote?
I think since
I'm not seeing anything on here.
there's nothing on here, I don't think there's a reason for any abstentions because we are acting as COG.
Yeah.
Excuse me, is the 4,000 change?
$4,176 is the amount
Yeah.
we're talking
Is
about.
that the COG obligation?
That is our obligation.
It's a COG
only.
obligation. Thank you.
It's not anyone else. It doesn't include any of the fees coming from other sources. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
No.
Okay, motion passes. Next, we have the university report. Mr. Moore, you are on.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's been a while since I've been in the room and seen all of your friendly faces, and so it's good to be here. I'll be relatively brief. I think for the most part, Penn State has had a successful start to the semester. We will complete our census on September 30th. And so our enrollment statistics will be out in mid-October. We generally do a public story on that, but we certainly can also inform this group as to all of our enrollment statistics at the next COG meeting in October. We did end the application year with 98,000 applications to Penn State University Park campus alone, just for University Park campus. And while again this isn't official, we do believe this year's first year class will be slightly smaller than last fall's class. And so while I do believe enrollment will slightly go up, it will not be as large of a first year class as last year's. On another topic, I hope that members of COG have seen President Bendapundi's message on free speech and the First Amendment. And while I don't have any announcements today, I am quite sure we will see controversial speakers on campus this fall. Again, those speakers are not invited by the university or the administration, but by student groups. The administration is committed to attempting to foster free and open exchange of ideas, keeping speakers and protesters or potential protesters safe, and we will do our very best to manage those any of those speaking engagements. We certainly learned lessons from last year and hope to apply them this year. Something that's been keeping quite a bit of my calendar busy is the fact that while most people believe the state budget is done, it is not. The state budget is not complete because there are a couple of bills that go along with the budget that are not complete, and Penn State's appropriations bill is one of them. And so the state-related universities have not yet received a commitment from the state for funding for this fiscal year that we're almost 3 months into already. Our State House and Senate will be in session almost every week in October, and so we're very hopeful that our portion of the state budget will be finished in October. And finally, and specifically of interest to this group, we have completed our search for the new Director of Local Government and Community Relations. That's the only news I can share with you, is that we have completed the search. We have a November 8th start date for him, but we will be announcing that hopefully over the next month. The name of that person, I can't share that with you yet because I'm not sure he's told his entire current team yet that he's departing his current job, and so we'll share all of that with all of you in the next month, I believe. So sorry for the bit of a teaser cliffhanger there, but that's the best I can do. So that's it for my report.
It's nice to know that there is going to be a new person in that position.
In other words, it's nice to know that I won't be back. Is that what you're saying, Jesse?
I would never say that to you in front of you,
I'll be
Zach.
back next month. I'll be back next month. You got one more month of me, I think.
We will look forward to it.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Moore? Okay. Is there anybody from the school board still here? They were here a minute ago, and now, so we won't get a report from SCASD. But we do have Mr. Frank here to give us a report on Whitehall Road Regional Park.
I'm not Zach Moore, but I'll do my best. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, for those that have not already heard, Ms. Kathy Bisco, the COG Facilities Project Manager, resigned as of this past Friday to explore new opportunities more in line with her strategic planning and consulting background. We wish her nothing but the best in the future and thank her for her service to COG, and in particular the Whitehall Road Regional Park project. Fortunately, we are in the final stages of the project, and the remainder of the project team, led by our fearless leaders Christy Owens and Kathy Madison, have rallied around the flag and are confident in their ability to bring the project to a successful conclusion with the support of the project's dedicated contractors. Since we last met, all the paving has been completed and the site contractor is putting the finishing touches to the park. The simply incredible playground area is in the very final stages, which includes a pending safety certification. Towards that, the important ground surface of the playground has now passed its drop test for safety of our most valuable residents. Everything but the fencing, which was waiting on a final permit, and the landscaping, which is waiting on the final site work and cooperative weather, is over 90% complete. The project team is now shifting to punch lists, permit finals, and contract closeouts. Mr. Carpenter and his crew are beginning to install the owner-supplied amenities, and we all look forward to being able to use the park very soon. In the matters of record with tonight's agenda are the September 18th, 23 project summary, Table 1 and Table 4, as reviewed by the authority at their 9/21/23 meeting. As shown in the project summary in Table 4, the project is financially in a sound position. Pending any questions, Mr. Chair.
My only question is, will I be able to use the park before State College Borough brings in my replacement next year?
I would certainly hope so.
So would I. All right. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Frank? Thank you very much. Executive Director Report, Mr. Norenberg.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the reports from everyone earlier. As Mr. Frank indicated, Kathy Bisco, her last day was on Friday, so we will be regrouping with HR to look at the job description, look at how and when we will be able to refill that position. We have other recruitments underway right now. I consulted with the chair of the Facilities Committee this morning about handling the important business for the Facilities Committee over the next month or so, but we'll have some transitions to work on together on that. So in your packet is the September activity report. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the activity report, but if there are none, we will have, I think, an update from our code director on under the agency director report. We'll actually need to pass on the report from Christy Owens, our Parks and Rec director, until next month on the grant for Milbert Marsh Nature Center. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Walt.
I just have, are there any matters of record we should pay particular attention to?
Just to note the upcoming budget hearings, and we're working on distributing the budget information to the Finance Committee and others. First books are going out to the Finance Committee tonight. We'll send out the PDF information tomorrow for those that get it electronically. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next report is from Mr. Schneider of the Center Region Code Administration.
Good evening. I wanted to report to the General Forum that the Center Region Code Administration in August met with representatives of Verisk. Verisk is who most people would know as the traditional ISO or Insurance Services Office. Their technical name is Verisk now. They rate all of the code administrations in the country, as well as all of the public safety organizations with respect to fire departments, water systems, and so on. The BSEG's rating scheme is what is used for the code offices. Currently, our rating is a 1-2. We are a 1 for commercial and 2 for residential. We met with them. It is anticipated that our rating is going to stay the same. There are approximately 13 ones for commercial in the entire country. And there's only, I think, 14 ones for residential. I haven't seen the latest data on that, but that's roughly where the number has traditionally hung. We are currently working with them, and we're anticipating those numbers to stay the same, though we're working with them. There are a number of items that, due to the way the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania adopts the code and works with the code overall, that cost us points with respect to our residential rating. And we're currently working with them for clarification on that and seeing if we can work through those because of some of the things that we do here locally that provide additional safety to our building occupants and our building owners. And so we're working through that, and I'm hoping that by the next meeting I can share with you an official determination letter from Verisk on our rating scheme. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. The question that most people will ask is, what is the significance of this? The rating scheme, both the PPC rating, which is what the fire department gets, and the BSEGS rating, which is what the code office gets, is shared with insurance agencies and in many cases goes into their calculation for insurance rates that then are charged building owners and property owners in the individual municipalities, and because it's a measure of the level of safety in the built environment. And so the better the rating, one is the best you get. The better the rating, the better insurance rates, as this goes into a piece of the calculation. So this is being done, and we continue to work to try and get the best rating we can in order to be able to save our residents and building owners and property owners money on their insurance rates, because it's a measure of the level of safety that we maintain as a community. But I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Authority, board, and committee reports. Mr. Ciavello on executive committee.
I have nothing to add to what's in the, other than what's in the agenda.
The finance committee did not meet, but I note that they have a lot of meetings coming up. And we have, the next one that did meet is the Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee. I note that Mr. Haymeister isn't here. Ms. Strickland, is there anything to add to what's there?
Nothing to add to what's in the agenda.
Okay, climate action and sustainability. Ms. Whitman is not here, I don't think, but Mr. Thompson, is there anything to add?
Nothing further than just bring your attention to matter of record I. The Pennsylvania Municipal League will be having a 2023 Sustainable PA conference in November at the Wyndham in Gettysburg. So,
No. Okay, I've been to that before, and it's a very interesting meeting.
Yep.
Let's see, Parks and Rec. Let's see, Center Region Library Board, and let's see. I don't have any other business there. What's our next report? I don't think there's. Pardon?
Is it not SWAT?
Do we have anything to report on from SHLO, Ms. Collins? Okay. And, okay, I guess we go to other business, and then there's one other item, 16. Would anyone like to make a motion? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Nice.